Well, what's going on, guys? So every day I work on my game, I follow the same three-step process. Step 1, I plan out my goal for the day. Step 2, I begin working towards that goal. Step 3, I run into a problem or error I've never seen before, and I feel like giving up. Within a few minutes of not being able to solve the issue, I start to believe this is the one problem that will finally end my game dev career. This especially becomes true when I try Googling a solution and nothing even seems to be related to my issue. I get frustrated spending hours trying to solve the issue, not only because I feel like I'm wasting time, but also because it's almost 4 in the morning and I haven't even achieved my daily goal yet. However, it's strange, when I step away from the problem and do something entirely different, a simple solution to fix that initial problem usually pops into my head. Even if it doesn't fix the initial problem for me straight away, it often sets me on the right track to eventually solve it. This is when I'm reminded of the simple concept, every problem has a solution. Even though in the 5.5 years of learning game dev I've solved hundreds of problems I once thought impossible, I tend to forget this phrase when I'm in the midst of stressing out over a critical short-term issue or error message. So in a way, this devlog will serve 3 purposes. Number 1, to share the goals I set for the last month. Number 2, to share the problems I faced and the solutions I came up with to reach my goals. And 3, to remind my future self that every problem has a solution. Before sharing my most recent problems and solutions, I want to thank everyone who has followed and supported the channel since the beginning. For those of you who are new, I started learning all things game dev from scratch back in December 2018 with the ultimate goal of creating my dream game. I use this channel to document my progress and provide updates on the game with the year-end goal of creating my first public demo. For some background on the game, the player arrives in a broken down village and is tasked with restoring it back to its original state. Much of the core gameplay loop involves fixing broken objects in the world and helping NPCs with various tasks. Quest rewards will include new tools, items, which will help you progress further and more efficiently through the game. The demo will serve to teach basic gameplay mechanics while rewarding the player with necessary tools and knowledge in the process. For example, when just starting out, fixing a fence will only require 1 wood and a hammer to fix, while fixing a larger structure such as a bridge will require more wood but will provide additional rewards as well as unlock an entirely new area to explore. My main goal for the demo is to incorporate these quest mechanics and gameplay loop so they work with not only my keyboard and mouse, but also with the gamepad. So last month I worked on adding controller support for the game, and majority of the controls work well with both the keyboard and mouse and the Xbox controller. So after working on this, I decided to shift gears in June and start adding sound effects to my game for the first time. I started off by watching tutorials and videos of how professionals create sound effects for AAA games and movies. It was interesting to see that many of the sound effects were created with objects much different to what you see on the screen. For example, for horses running in a scene, I figured they would use just a bunch of horses running and record those sounds. However, due to ambient noise, recording sounds like this result in muddled audio. So instead they decided to use toilet plungers on stone to create the sound of horse hooves hitting the ground, and you really wouldn't even know the difference.
These are actually just toilet plungers.
I thought this was really interesting and exciting, so I went around my house seeing what random objects I could find to make different sound effects. I like to cook, so I took my laptop and mic to the kitchen and recorded myself chopping garlic, onions, peppers, and whatever else I was using to make chicken quesadillas that night. The knife itself even made some cool sounds while slicing the cutting board or styrofoam in different ways. I then went to my gardening stuff to get sound effects such as pouring water from my watering can or shaking seeds to get some kind of planting seed sound effect. Ultimately, I got a bunch of raw sound effects and then watched some tutorials on how to use Audacity. It was important to learn which proper decibel levels to use for different sound effects such as player running or chopping a tree. This is especially true when managing the ambient sound and background music for the game. So after learning to remove background noise from the sound effects, I decided it was time to open up Unity and start seeing how it sounded in the game. However, this is when I ran into my first big issue. I simply just opened Unity on my Mac as I've done thousands of times before, yet it wouldn't load past the splash screen. I restarted my computer, tried reinstalling Unity and Unity Hub a few times, tried updating my Mac operating system, yet nothing worked. I changed my app settings on my Mac to allow Unity to download updates, as this has worked for me in the past, but that didn't even work either. After 6 hours of trying to get Unity to load, it was around 4 a.m. and I decided to transfer everything over to my PC. I was hesitant to do this as I've been using my Mac for basically everything since 2018, It was painful thinking I would have to relearn controls and keyboard shortcuts for all the programs, Unity, Blender, GIMP. Not to mention download the programs, change my settings, and transfer all the assets from my game, including 3D models, scripts, 2D art, everything. And I figured it was a headache just thinking about it, but it was the only solution I could think of at the time. So I went ahead, bit the bullet, and after a few more hours, I had everything transferred to my PC around 6 a.m. The sun was coming up at this time, so I forced myself to go to sleep. I woke up the next morning and had a new sense of relief and clarity. In addition to Unity now working on my PC, I started thinking of more benefits of working on my PC versus my Mac, which I didn't realize when I was stressing out the night before. Just some of these included that my Mac actually doesn't have USB ports. This is on the newer models for some reason, so I couldn't save backups on my external hard drive. Number 2, I couldn't record sound effects with my USB microphone on my Mac because, again, there's no USB port. So I had to waste time transferring all my files from my PC and to my Mac every time I wanted to create a new sound effect. Number 3, I found OBS to record gameplay on my PC was much better than using QuickTime on my Mac. For some reason, it's extremely difficult to record desktop audio on the Mac due to the built-in speakers. So I had to download a separate file to get the desktop audio, and it was just a mess. So it was nice not having to deal with that anymore. Number 4, another thing I didn't realize, that troubleshooting Unity issues was actually easier on PC because it's seemingly like there's a lot more PC users using Unity than Mac. I was able to find solutions to the PC problems more quickly than the Mac due to more PC users seemingly using Unity. Number 5, I was using iMovie for a while for video editing, but with the new macOS update, it just kept crashing, so I decided to switch to DaVinci Resolve, and actually I like it a lot better too. So it's funny, I'd been developing this game on my Mac for the last 5 years, and I thought it would be a disaster when I was forced to switch to PC. However, the solution not only allowed me to work normally again in Unity, but also provided many other benefits I didn't actually realize beforehand. So this is another example of when I have to continually remind myself that every problem has a solution. One of my favorite things in working to solve a problem is actually uncovering a solution to an unrelated problem in the process. And a perfect example of this occurred this month while I was attempting to make specific sound effects. At first I was trying to make a tree chopping sound by dropping different objects on my wooden desk, and honestly it sounded more like knocking than chopping, which I thought would be better suited for a hammer hitting wood when fixing a fence. So I then tried to make a sword swing sound effect by using a knife. However, after listening to the raw audio of chopping onions, it sounded much like an axe chopping into a tree. It had a little knock sound effect to it, but also a bit of a crunch sound, which goes well with the an axe chopping sound effect. And to my surprise, I now believe it's more fun and efficient to record a bunch of audio using different objects in different ways, without any kind of specific sound effects target in mind. Then take a break and listen to the raw audio to see what the sound effect most sounds like. It also works well to take sound effects that are most enjoyable to hear and layer them with other sound effects. I've learned that even though they may not be 100% realistic to the task that you see in the game, I believe the sound effects should be pleasing to the ear first and foremost, and that seems to be the priority, especially when I was testing it over and over. And at this point, I've created and implemented about half of the sound effects for the upcoming demo. And I've also created an options menu to allow the player to change the master volume, sound effects volume, and music volume. Some of the sound effects I created so far are for the item pickup, planting seeds, watering plants, fixing fences, cutting weeds, chopping trees, the falling of the tree, crashing of the tree, and then when quest objectives or quest complete are satisfied. Although not perfect, I'm happy with where they are at the moment and should be sufficient enough for a first demo. In addition to the sound effects, I realized that the quest dialogue was not 100% clear of where to go, so I have been working on a quest log. This will provide more information about each quest and will allow the player to track up to 3 quests. I also need this quest tracking system to work with controller and keyboard and mouse, so I'm trying to figure out controls that work well for both. In addition to working on the sound effects and quest log, I wanted to ensure there was no problem for the player to figure out where to go to complete the quest. Therefore, I created a notification system to give directions whenever a quest objective changed, or a quest was added. I also added a green circle to act as a quest marker for each quest accepted and tracked, and the camera will also pan to the quest location after accepting it. Very similar to like Breath of the Wild, where it shows the location while the dialogue is active. One of my biggest issues with other games is not knowing where to go when I complete a quest. So preventing aimless running around is a high priority for me. And the goal is to maximize the time the player is completing tasks and getting rewards, basically doing fun things in the game, and minimize the time the player spends reading or being unsure to where to go next. I also created a system on scene load to display a random loading tip, which is pretty cool. I never had like a scene transition before, and that will work well when I implement cutscenes and especially the opening kind of like trailer that I want to add to the game when the player first starts the game to introduce them to it. So, for the following month, my goal is to finish creating and implementing the remaining sound effects, finish the questlog and questlog UI, create a system to show controls based on the input of controllers. So like if it's a keyboard and mouse, it should show E for interact, while if a controller is being used, it should show like A on Xbox or whatever the south button is on whatever is being used, Switch controller or PlayStation controller. And number 4 is ensure all player controls and UI controls work with the keyboard, mouse, and controller. This includes like the quest log, the inventory, and the action slots, all that kind of stuff. Ensure the game manual has information on all the mechanics within the demo, which I started working on. I just need to add a few more things to it to make sure that it includes everything that may be necessary for the demo. And once the above is all complete, I will test out the demo from start to finish on my own. If I don't find any bugs or issues, I'll have my family test it again to get their second round of feedback. Then I'll take notes on any issues or problems they may have uncovered and fix those to improve the demo. And once all of this goes smoothly and there's no bugs that I've seen or my family have seen from these tests, I will feel comfortable releasing my very first demo to the public for everyone to try out finally. As always, thank you for the support and patience. This has been a long journey, but I want to ensure even the first demo is as enjoyable and bug-free as possible, especially the save load system, because I don't want anyone playing, saving the progress, and all of a sudden come back and losing all, because that's the worst feeling. So that's the latest. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next devlog.